for the country. Gordon will continue his testimony tomorrow. Clement Banyatela, Eyewitness News, Johannesburg.
Eskom says there's a low probability of load shedding this evening following emergency stage 1 load shedding yesterday due to a coal supply shortage. The power utility confirmed that it was running low on the energy source, saying its power stations have less than 10 days worth of coal remaining. While Eskom says it isn't likely that load shedding will happen today, citizens should still remain vigilant about how much electricity is being consumed. Spokesperson Dekatso Motai.
The system is looking much better today, and we do not foresee the need to go into load shedding for today. The system does, however, remain constrained today and for the rest of the week, and we cannot rule out the possibility of load shedding in the week.
The Right to Know campaign says it was ludicrous of the police minister to oppose a ruling that found it unconstitutional for a group of people to be criminally charged for convening a peaceful protest, notifying authorities. In a unanimous judgment today, the Constitutional Court upheld the High Court in Cape Town's declaration, which found a section of the Gatherings Act invalid. Earlier this year, that court overturned the convictions of 10 coalition members who were found guilty of convening an illegal protest in Cape Town in 2013. Tando Kubeka reports.
The Constitutional Court has ruled that criminalizing peaceful protests on the basis that they were convened without giving authorities notice is unjustifiable. The Right to Know campaign's Tami Nkosi says no matter where they are, citizens should be able to make their voices heard.
This is a victory primarily for democracy and a victory for our society to be able to have their voices heard.
He says they will now seek legal advice on how to assist the 10 activists who were unlawfully convicted.
It's very unfair to have had people's lives been on hold for almost 5 years.
The Corn Court says while people have a right to protest, the rights of those who intend to act violently during demonstrations will be revoked. Thando Kubeka, Eyewitness News, Constitutional Court.
Former DA leader Tony Leon says Patricia de Lille's new party should be seen as a serious threat to the DA's control in the Western Cape. De Lille announced yesterday that she'll be contesting the 2019 elections with a new political party. The former Cape Town mayor will be launching a party in January. Leon says de Lille and a former party, the Independent Democrats, contesting in the 2004 elections led to a two-front war for the DA.
We had to defend traditional turf against the ID and de Lille in the Cape Flats and the southern suburbs and the northern suburbs of Cape Town, and then we had to fight the ANC and the rest of the country. So a two-front war is difficult in politics, and that's what de Lille is going to do.
He says the formation of this new party could be a way of draining votes from the DA.
Drain votes from the DA which aren't otherwise available to the ANC, and therefore dilute the overall DA total in the Western Cape. I don't know what the DA totals are showing, but if they're somewhere in the 50s in the Western Cape, then that clearly is a danger, and it's a distraction, but it needs to be dealt with, because otherwise DA rule in the Western Cape might be injected.
The diplomat driving relations with countries to the east says South Africa is not taking advantage of its ties with the dynamic association of the Southeast Asian nations. Deputy Director General for Asia and the Middle East at the Department of International Relations, Anil Suklal, says the countries have a population the size of the European Union and constitute South Africa's largest trading partner. Jean-Jacques Cornish reports.
But I believe we don't take full advantage of the presence of these embassies here in Pretoria, nor do we take full advantage of the investments we have made in opening embassies in 6 of the 10 ASEAN countries.
Gold's trading at $1,222.67 an ounce. The rand's $13.98 to the dollar, $17.99 to the pound, $16.02 to the euro. Brent crude $66.65 a barrel.
And in your sport, Janine van Wyk says Banyana Banyana can't afford to take Equatorial Guinea lightly in their next women's AFCON group game. And Springbok legend Victor Matfield is one of 3 men shortlisted for the Bulls head coach job.
Partly cloudy in Gauteng tomorrow with scattered afternoon thunder showers. Joburg dropping to an overnight low of 14, reaching a high of 26. Pretoria 16 and 27, Vereeniging 13 and 26. Cape Town a 30% chance of rain with a fresh southerly breeze, a low of 15 and a high of 21. The top story this hour, Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan has told the State Capture Commission that former President Jacob Zuma was determined to go ahead with the nuclear build program, despite the reality that the country could not afford it.
Eyewitness News, in touch, in tune, and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.mobi.
Choose to make a positive impact. Lead SA.
EWN. Traffic.
Going to start off in the city of Ekurhuleni on the N12 East Highway with queuing traffic between Atlas Road and Snake, and that's because of a car that caught fire earlier on round about the Snake off ramp. And on the N17 East, if you're heading towards Dal Park or towards Carnival City, there is slow moving traffic between the R21 and the R23. Queuing traffic on the Mike 1 South between Sandton and Boysens, and according to Sandwell, we've got 2 incidents on the N3 South, a stationary vehicle by Van Buren Road, and in the northerly direction there is also a vehicle at Van Buren Road, so approach the area carefully. It's a Hope Budisandi, EWN Traffic.
EWN Traffic. The Money Show with Bruce Whitfield on 702. For the curious on 92.7 and 106 FM.
The Money Show brought to you by Nedbank. Looking at money from every angle leads to better money decisions. See money differently. Nedbank. In a moment, Ismail Mamoniat, National Treasury Deputy Director General, wants to talk about momentum and the claim that wasn't paid. We'll talk to Richard Friedland. He is the Chief Executive at Netcare. Plus, this evening, Floyd Chavambu's behaving like a jilted lover when it comes to Pravin Gordhan, standing and ranting and raving, not producing any evidence for vast numbers of claims outside the State Capture Commission today. Will any of it settle, we wonder? We'll talk about today's market activity. Lots of results coming out today. Chris Skutter, Chief Executive at Astral Foods. We will also tonight talk to Rob Rose, the author of Steinheist, the most comprehensive insight yet into the calamity that befell Steinhoff. And then David Block, Professor Block, the astronomer, there we go, the astrophysicist, the astronomer, the guy who knows more about space than space itself. Looking forward to catching up with him this evening as we talk to him about money.
The Money Show with Bruce Whitfield. Live, online, smartphones, DSTV, and 92.7 and 106 FM.
Coming up in the next 20 minutes, today's Fast Fact with Mercantile Bank, the business bank inspired by entrepreneurs. And here's today's Fast Fact question. With Mercantile Bank, I'd like to know from you, please, where will you find the gherkin, the cheese grater, the walkie-talkie, and if plans are approved soon, the tulip? Where will you find those 4 things? The gherkin, the cheese grater, the walkie-talkie, and the tulip. Where will you find those 4 things? 31702 31567 on The Money Show.
702. Bruce is on Twitter at Bruce Business.
Dr. Richard Friedland in a moment, the Netcare Chief Executive. But first, Ismail Mamoniat, National Treasury Deputy Director General, infuriated by Momentum's decision, I take it, Ismail Mamoniat, for not paying out a life insurance claim. This is a life insurance claim in which there was not full disclosure on application, where the victim of a hijacking did not disclose, Nathan Gannas did not disclose that he had high blood sugar. This emerged after his death. Momentum didn't pay out. Why is it, in your view, wrong of Momentum to not have paid?
Bruce, I don't want to talk about Momentum, this particular case, because obviously I don't know all the details. But let's say, if you look at the public outrage, I think the public outrage is 100% correct. It's precisely the type of abuse that we want to deal with when we introduce Twin Peaks and why we have a market conduct regulator. In fact, a few years ago, I went to the insurance conference and pointed to precisely these types of problems. And if these problems are still there, I am outraged. And I think that certainly, whilst the new conduct regulator has just been set up, I would see behavior like this needs to be stamped out as soon as possible. Let me say one of 2 things. Firstly, I was shocked that you can have a company come on 702 this morning and perhaps other radio stations and talk about a particular product. I think that is unethical, and I'm going to report that to the regulatory authorities. Secondly, I think the approach that's taken, where they've taken premiums for many years, and then if, when you have a trigger point, like in this case, the unfortunate death of the client, you then go around looking for reasons for non-disclosure. Now, I'm not saying that that is completely out of line. Certainly, that needs to be looked at. But for the company to continue to take premiums for 4 years without checking those details. For the company then not to pay out, because then the punishment is 100%. There's no proportionality.
Okay, let's just go quick test of a few things there, Ismail Momonian. The company this afternoon has returned 4 years worth of premiums. It's not going to be demanding back the 50,000 Rand payment it made upon death, which we use for funeral expenses. It would regard that as a very significant compromise. Is that not sufficient to allay the concerns of claimants in cases where questions were asked on a sheet and the individual concerned knowingly failed to disclose a question that could have been material in a life claim?
Bruce, I don't want to go into the particular case because obviously we don't know the details. But I think if that's what the company is doing, it's even more outrageous. Because that tells me that they are now saying that for 4 years they sat on their backside and didn't go and get those details, and then suddenly they find something. I think they must pay the full amount. If they, paying, just talking about returning the premiums is not good enough. And I'm certainly going to ask the regulators to go into this case. They need to get all the facts. The company needs to put its case forward. But this type of behavior in the insurance industry needs to be stamped out. And frankly, if that's how they operate, the Twin Peaks approach that we've taken, we want to outlaw that kind of approach where a company looks for an excuse not to pay out and then has the nerve to pay back premiums after there's a public outcry. I think it's quite unacceptable.
Ismail Momonian, thank you very much. National Treasury Deputy Director General, a man who makes insurance executives quiver in their boots. I've seen it myself as he dresses down insurance executives at big conferences. Interesting. What about the issue, though, of non-disclosure when it comes to premiums? If you disclose lots of different things that are wrong with you, then the insurance company will price its insurance offering differently. It will charge you more. So it will say you were underinsured, you did not disclose, we're legally entitled to withhold the payment. This could become a test case. Although Wendy Knowler joins us later, we'll talk about it in more detail then, just after 7 o'clock. Stay tuned for that. Dr. Richard Friedland now, and one of the great tragedies of South Africa is the growing demand for mental health treatment. So big is it that Netcare is building a dedicated business aimed at addressing that need. It acquired a business that deals with mental health patients earlier on this year. Netcare reporting a small increase in full-year profits after announcing its imminent departure from the United Kingdom earlier this year, and also will pay out a special 40 cents a share special dividend. Dr. Richard Friedland is Chief Executive of Netcare. The propensity for mental health care issues in South Africa, is it particular, Richard Friedland, to South Africa, or are you seeing a global trend?
Good evening, Bruce. It's not particular to South Africa. South Africa is following what we're seeing internationally, and unfortunately this is a scourge. We're seeing an exponential rise in people suffering from a variety of so-called mental conditions, be they depression or anxiety, and unfortunately we're not immune from that in South Africa.
We're certainly not, and it's a growing business in South Africa. Is it growing out of kilter with other parts of the Netcare business?
Well, it certainly is growing faster, and there seems to be a bigger demand, and we are preparing ourselves accordingly in terms of that. Yes.
And when we look at the state of the basic business of Netcare, hospitals and emergency services up nearly 6% year on year, showing increased demand for private healthcare services. Is that related to the fact that more people are joining medical aid? Is it at all related to private admissions? Is this really indicative of a failure of the state system? It's one of those three, one would think.
Bruce, just to correct that number actually includes KESO, or our mental health, for 6 months. So the real number is closer to 1.7%. Medical aid membership is not growing. Usually we find that growth in membership is correlated to formal employment, and I needn't tell you, we haven't seen a growth in formal employment for a long time. I do think there is an issue with public health. I think we made it very clear in our presentation today that we stand ready in a very practical and meaningful way to assist public health, which is the bedrock of healthcare delivery. But we know we've got a lot to do within Netcare itself to improve the quality and the safety of the care we provide, and hence our very large digitization project that we announced today as well.
We always ask you about the future of NHI, and it moves further and further away. It seems every time I ask you about it, we have a bigger deterioration in the overburdened public healthcare sector in South Africa. I mean, either we implement NHI in time to save what's left, or the system falls apart and we have to rebuild it. What's the most likely outcome, do you think?
Well, I think that when you look at the public sector, and just bear the few facts in mind, we've had a population that's increased from about 25 million in the 70s to close on 60 million today. So it's more than doubled. If you look at the number of public sector beds, hospital beds, they've declined by 25% over the same period. Add urbanization and this incredible increase in the burden of disease, and it's no wonder that the public sector is under threat and overburdened. And what we're saying is that, notwithstanding the huge contribution the private sector makes, the public sector is the bedrock of healthcare delivery. We all need to address the issue of access and equity. And so today we suggested two very large initiatives. One is really a Marshall Plan on training of doctors using the private sector, both at an undergraduate and postgraduate level, and training of nurses. You can't provide decent healthcare for all without the people to administer it. And I would say that the skill shortage is an issue that needs what we call a Marshall Plan to achieve, and the private sector stands ready to assist. In terms of capacity, Bruce, we've done a study that we commissioned just before the Presidential Health Summit to understand how much capacity we have in the private sector. Well, we have spare capacity of about 15%. That translates across the private sector to the ability to treat another 7.7 million South Africans on elective surgery, wherever the backlogs and the pressures are. And we think these are very practical solutions that we're putting on the table to government to say, let us help in addressing this issue of access and to decent and good quality care.
Dr. Richard Friedland, NEC Chief Executive. I mean, if government is if government is serious about its cooperation with the public sector and private sector, it'll bite its hand off. It really will. I'm not anticipating it happening anytime soon, though. Did you see videos today of this vociferous criticism of Pravin Gordhan outside the State Capture Commission in Braamfontein today? The EFF leading this charge against the Public Enterprises Minister, making claims that he's the chief enabler of state capture. He seemed pretty nonplussed. He gave evidence inside the building. And my question is, what is the bee that the EFF has got in its bonnet over Pravin Gordhan? I've got no idea if any of the allegations, even one of them, makes any sense or correct or not. But if they are factual, then really the EFF should be presenting these not on the streets, but certainly in the commission itself. The EFF behaving like a desperate, jilted spouse, standing on the ground floor of a block of flats, hurling abuse at the top floor as your ex-partner entertains their new lover. I mean, that's what it felt like today. Peter du Toit, assistant editor of In-Depth News at News 24. Is any of the allegations that are being made by Floyd Shivambu on the street outside the commission supported by any evidence you have seen so far, Peter du Toit?
Well, Bruce, no. And it's very difficult to, like you earlier said, to exactly or precisely understand what the EFF's gripe with the minister, the former Minister of Finance, is. Floyd Shivambu, the party's deputy leader, today outside the building in Parktown where the State Capture Commission is sitting, from the top of his lungs shouting that Pravin Gordhan was an enabler of state capture and that he helped the Guptas gain traction in the country, and that he was a staunch defender of Jacob Zuma. Now, on any objective set of facts, that simply is not true.
So, I mean, is this the politics of distraction playing out? The more noise Floyd Shivambu makes about other people and tries to get our attention focused on his narrative rather than the narrative that he and his brother were beneficiaries, for example, of VBS Mutual Bank. Perhaps we would, maybe that's really what's going on behind the scenes.
I think that's exactly that. While Floyd Shivambu and his cohorts were shouting outside, Pravin Gordhan inside the building where the State Capture Commission is sitting clearly spoke and illustrated to the audience there and illustrated to Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo how the politics of distraction works. It's pretty much like when you're robbing a bank, you just make a noise at a different locale, a different venue, and you'll lead the police away from what's actually happening. And that's exactly what happened while he was Minister of Finance. There was a lot of noise. You'd remember the trumped-up charges that were laid by the Hawks, the attempted prosecution by the NPA, which were eventually dropped. You'd also remember the Treasury and Minister of Finance, Gordhan, who had to resort to issuing a public statement calling on the public to defend National Treasury while it was under assault from the state capturers and the rent seekers. And the question needs to be asked of the EFF why, after they supported Gordhan last year to the hilt, supported him, even went on a march in support of Gordhan. They've now turned around and trained their guns on him.
The politics of distraction, I think that's exactly what it is. Peter du Toit, thank you, Assistant Editor of In-Depth News at News 24. 3 great stories leading the Money Show this evening. We'll touch on some of those as we go through to market commentary in a moment with Arthur Karras from the Old Mutual Investment Group and pick up further on that momentum story. Lots of you are quite angry at the stance being taken by Ismail Momoniat when he talks about the regulation that he wants to be bringing to make sure that we don't get these sorts of claims repudiated in future. He's going to face stiff pushback from the insurance industry, will Ismail Momoniat, but does he have a point in terms of the legitimacy of claims in an environment like South Africa? We'll talk about that in more detail coming up on The Money Show.
EWN Traffic.
A minor accident on the N3 South Highway. It happened just after the Gilulis interchange, and this incident is already slowing down the traffic out of the Bakru interchange. And past the Van Buren off ramp, there is a stationary vehicle that's reported around the Earlands interchange. So this might have an impact on the traffic flow. And on top of that, it's wet across the city of Joburg this evening. So you can expect slow moving traffic. I hope it will be slow moving traffic as you don't have to speed during this wet weather conditions. Delays also on the R24 west towards Gilulis. But on the N12 east, slow moving traffic between Craft Road and Snake due to an earlier accident.
EWN Traffic.
I'm sitting in the car outside my kids' school working on my laptop when this guy outside my window says, Office on Wheels. I smile and I say, QuickBooks. Amazing, he says. Love how he takes care of my financials. He helps his kids into the car and says, and gives me time for what's really important.
QuickBooks, the world's #1 online accounting software. Right now, save up to 70% on QuickBooks Online. Now from only 59 Rand a month. Visit quickbooks.co.za, T's and C's apply.
So if I'm selling my car, why should I use you?
Because we buy cars.
Do I need to advertise it and wait for a buyer?
No, we buy cars.
Do I need to spend hours taking calls and showing it to time wasters?
No, we buy cars.
You'll even come to me?
And do all the paperwork with immediate payment.
Really?
Yes, we buy cars.
Well, that's quick and painless.
WeBuyCars.co.za, the easiest way to sell your car by far. Don't waste another moment. Visit WeBuyCars.co.za because we buy cars.
Hi there, what can I get you?
Oh, I'll take the week in tropical Chiang Mai with 3 of my besties to experience Thai New Year.
Order any main at Simply Asia from Monday to Wednesday and stand to win a 200,000 Rand trip to Thailand, including a stopover holiday in Singapore. Plus, you get a free basil-infused drink with every order. Brought to you by Singapore Airlines and Simply Asia. Authentic Thai, made simple. T's and C's apply.
Ball & Properties is transforming the way you live. The Polo Fields in the heart of Waterford has launched its state-of-the-art upmarket lifestyle center with its own restaurant, wellness spa, swimming pool, gym, squash courts, concierge, function room, laundromat, cinema room, and games room. Consisting of 2 and 3 bedroom luxury apartments, including integrated snake appliances and top-of-the-range luxury finishes. Spectacular apartments and lifestyle center open to view now. Prices range from 2,049,900. Go to Ball & Fields.